Thanks for taking the time in this summer day to join us today for a short overview of the documentary Combate and a discussion afterwards with its director, Temis Lopez. My name is Carlos Ivan Lopez. I'm a vice president of VAUS, and it's an honor for me to receive you today in this webinar from VAUS. The Venezuela American Association has been promoting exchange between Venezuela and the US for 87 years and counting. During the ongoing crisis in Venezuela, VAUS has been diligent in fostering discussion to spark action. We thank you all for being with us today and for being on our quest for knowledge and for a better future for Venezuela. I'll make a brief introduction about the film Combate. Combate tells the story of a country that was seduced by a charismatic leader who promised marginalized people a prosperous, fair, and corruption-free paradise. The humanist ideals presented by El Comandante seduced the vast majority of the population, but that vision gradually crumbled due to polarization, incompetence, violence, and corruption. The narrators of this saga, from very diverse social backgrounds, are parents whose children were brutally murdered, activists whose only crime was going out to protest, leaders who have risked their lives, were imprisoned, tortured, prosecuted, and now, from exile, continue the fight for justice on the international stage. Today, Venezuela is a country from which more than 7 million citizens have been forced to flee, where thousands of children have been left without parents, where those who dare to criticize the dictatorship are persecuted, imprisoned, and tortured, and only those connected to the regime can enjoy a normal life. These exiles reveal the methods of a regime that has caused the most serious humanitarian crisis in the history of South America. The story is filled with fascinating characters, devastating revelations, and unpredictable reversals of fortune. Now, allow me to introduce Temis Lopez and our president, Michael Skoll. Our featured guest, Temístocles López, is a Venezuelan screenwriter, producer, and director who grew up between Europe and the United States. In his eclectic and varied career, he has made films that range from the popular to the classic, and from the commercial to the avant-garde. Temis, as we call him, has lived in London, where he studied film, Rome, where he directed several plays, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, and Madrid, cities where he has been able to make critically acclaimed films such as Chain of Desire, Exquisite Corpses, and Bird of Prey. He has also produced and directed several documentaries, including Contemporánea, about the creative American avant-garde, Electra, about the life and work of Guglielmo Marconi, Hidalgo, about the work of Spanish philanthropist Diego Hidalgo, Electra, and Combate, a panoramic vision of Venezuelan recent history. Michael Skoll, our president, was the US ambassador to Venezuela from 1990 to 1993. Besides Caracas, his other foreign service postings were Buenos Aires, Saigon, Santo Domingo, Naples, Rome, San Jose, Bogota, and Washington, D.C. Since his retirement from the State Department, Ambassador Skoll has pursued a second career in anti-corruption, counter-money laundering, and risk management. He is principal of the binational US-Colombia consortium, Skoll and Serna. Since our program will conclude with a Q&A session, you may write questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of the page, and Mike will present them. We ask any media representative to give credit to us, as well as the speaker, of course, in any coverage of this program. And now, Mike, I turn the word to you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Carlos. It's quite a pleasure to welcome Temis Lopez to talk about his latest film, Combate. Now, Temis has directed a number of acclaimed, very dramatic films featuring some of Hollywood's leading stars. But this is a bit of a change. He has now focused on surely what must be one of the great real-life dramas of the 21st century, the catastrophe, which is today's Venezuela. Frankenstein, that famous film, remains frightening, but Combate shows what an authentic monster can do to living human beings. Okay, Temis, tell us something about Combate. Why did you make this film, and why did you call it Combate?
Well, I call it Combate simply because after 25 years of the Chavista regime coming on stage, there's still a struggle. There is still a struggle, a very, very intense and cruel struggle between the Chavismo and the opponents, the people who have been opposing the regime from the beginning. The thing is, at the very beginning, Chavez presented a picture that was rather attractive to many people, and then progressively it degenerated into this horrendous dictatorship that we're seeing now. What just happened in Brussels with the CELAC, or what's the name of this? The South American CELAC, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Anyway, these people, they invited the Cuban guy, the Venezuelan guy, and the Nicaraguan guy to participate in this dialogue. And I think that's the reason, that explains why this movie is necessary, because we cannot, after 25 years of having shown the violence, the horrors of a dictatorship that has ruined the country, to be accepted and to be normalized by people at this point.
It's like inviting Dracula to discuss what's to be done about vampires.
Exactly. So anyway, that's the reason. The reason is we need to inform people, because the biggest enemy of democracy in a way is ignorance. Ignorance, sometimes willful ignorance, because people refuse to get informed, refuse to see reality, refuse to be objective, whether it's from the extreme right or the extreme left. And now everything is polarized, and if I'm black, then you're white, and I think very few people are capable of being objective about the information. And I think that's why it is extremely important to inform people, to tell them this is what happened, and these are facts. This is not ideology. Ideologies these days are sort of an old-fashioned, conceit. What I want to do, because I have two Venezuelan friends that have participated in the film, besides Milagros Maldonado, by the way, who's one of the investors, a very dear friend of mine. But I have two friends who have, offered to say a few words about the movie, because I think these people, Orlando Vieira Blanco and Gilberto Carrasquero, are both extremely knowledgeable, much more than me in a way, about the Venezuelan issue, because they have lived there. They have lived for years. And they are analysts, historians. I mean, Orlando is a ambassador to the interim interim government in Ottawa, and besides being an extremely learned man. And Gilberto has been very involved in Venezuelan politics. So I would like to, rather, because they also have issues of time, I'd rather have them speak a little, have their own opinion, and then you and I can debate, and people can probably, I assume people can ask questions, and so forth. So let me introduce, Orlando is in New York. He needs to go to the World, what is it called, Orlando?
Orlando Association, the Congress of Law, International.
Okay. Well, take it from there, Orlando.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated the opportunity to try to promote a film that is a unique film. And I would like to try to explain a few words why it's a unique film. Because it's not just about combat between tolerance and intolerance, good and bad, or a combat between freedom and repression. It's a combat as well between the historical factor that origin that problem. Part of the problem is why we in Venezuela, a beautiful country, a rich country, oil country, example of democracy and freedom for many years, the first democracy in Latin America. Why that happened? If you want to understand why that happened, you have to see Combate, because it's the combat between the past, the present, and the future. So that is one of the issues that many of our colleagues and the people who has the opportunity to intervene in this film, we not just show the face of the situation, of the political situation and repression in Venezuela, we show the face of the Venezuelan that used to be a beautiful country, a rich country, and by the way, the Venezuela who still is there.
Yes, I lived in Venezuela during that period, and I can very much attest to that.
So one of the points that I'm going to be briefly, just to give you a little and a lighter issue about what consent, in my opinion, intervened in Venezuela for many years to become in the origin of the problem. Is two ways to lost the rule of law, institution and democracy. The first way is attacking directly the institutions, attacking the, all the establishment in the state. But the second way is indifferent. When you became indifferent. We used to be a country, a rich country with 75% of poverty. What's going on there? We delegate to the parties, we delegate the paternalism of the state to the parties, and this is an important issue. Why the Venezuelan people who has the opportunity to get a social mobilization, why we do not get back our, heart, our feelings to the people that has not opportunities. This is the lesson that we have to learn. And that moment, 40 years later of democracy, a good democracy, but with this kind of lack of social responsibility, Chavez is coming. And the country is blown up in division, in hatred, and in a bad and pretty bad feeling that Chavez, with the opportunity to reconcile, and a country just use the power to divide, to create hate, and finally to devastate a beautiful country. That is a threat to Venezuelan people? No. That is a combat right now all over the world. Because talking about indifference before the rule of law is not an issue just in Venezuela. Right now, here in New York, in the World Jurists Association, we are discussing about that issue, the indifference. And that is my point in Combate, and that is the only film, the only documentary that you will see why that happened in Venezuela, with a pretty good exposition about the origin, about the present, about how could be the future in a country with an abundance of everything, beauties, natural resources, location, and the most important thing, the people, our people. So that is just that I'm looking to say.
That is very, very good and very, very accurate and very important. And there's a lesson there in, as you say, not just Venezuela. You look around the world and you will find in all kinds of countries, including some very sophisticated Western countries, something of the same, a parallel development, which the media often ignores, which the people in general ignore, which so-called moderate politicians ignore, and they do this at the peril of society. I would encourage people to look again at the trailer, which came with your invitation, and perhaps, Laura, you can start flashing some of the still photos from the film. It is an extraordinarily dramatic lesson, which I think everybody should go to school to see. Okay, Temi, who's next? Gilberto?
Gilberto, my dear friend Gilberto, who is an enlightened man, with a great perspective overall. And that's all I have to say. Take it over, Gilberto.
Thank you, Temi, and thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here and promote this film. I subscribe every word my friend Orlando has said. He said, well, I want to add to that some different perspective. I think the reality of Venezuela, it's extraordinarily well documented in the film. However, the real punch, the real power of this film is that it really underlines the geopolitical importance of what's going on in Venezuela. We are living very convoluted times in the world, not just in Latin America, not just in Venezuela. Yes, Latin America has painted itself red, and we have a socialist facade for totalitarian autocratic regimes. But this is more of a criminal club, really, what's going on in Venezuela and more of some other countries in Venezuela. It's a well-known dictatorship in Nicaragua and Cuba. They have been in power for many years. They're not looking forward to leaving. Many other countries are emulating that example, and they have sought support from mega powers. So it's Russia, it's China, it's Iran, it's Turkey. We are living in a world where bloc politics are ruling the scene. And if you don't understand Venezuela in the global context as a crucial piece in the geopolitical puzzle, we won't be able to either solve the Venezuela issue or actually stop the escalation of it. Because actually, I think the whole hemisphere is in threat. And I will say this: the criminal gangsters, the guys who are organized around the idea of autocratic totalitarian regimes, they play a very tight teamwork kind of game. We try to pass a resolution in the UN to condemn human rights violations in Venezuela, and you have China and Russia using veto powers to stop these kinds of things. However, it's not true on the contrary. I mean, right now, as we speak, we have a legitimizing movement throughout the world to try to legitimize Maduro once again. Europe has opened the doors again. As you know, the US have sent convoys to try, or envoys, sorry, to try to negotiate new rules of the game to try to open up the oil market again. And we're seeing, going back to business as usual. So I think it's crucially important to underline that this is not just a Venezuelan issue. Venezuela is part of a larger geopolitical scene. I just finished reading an extraordinary book that I like to recommend. It's called The Age of the Strong Man: How the Cult on Leaders Threatens Democracy Around the World by Gideon Rachman. So this notion of the emergence of the strong man is not just a Venezuelan thing. And something that I think the film does quite well is that actually we get into a depth explanation of this underlying psychology that allows a country to fall into this trap. It's been well studied throughout ages. Actually, even Carl Gustav Jung in 1937 wrote an essay about the underlying psychological underpinning of the national socialism emergency in Germany in the late 30s, early 40s. So this is not a new social psychological phenomenon, but it's being re-edited around the world. And I think the real power of Combate is that it pushes this agenda forward of letting the world know the threat we're in. This is reality. It happened in Venezuela. Watch out, it can happen to you. I mean, we have seen even in very sophisticated and mature democratic countries like the US, the emergence of strong autocratic leaderships. So it's no country on earth is safe from this threat. And I think that what the film does really beautifully is to actually give this a face. This is what happens when you fall into the trap. So and no one is safe from it. And we do, as Venezuelans, we do need the help of the world. But actually, we are also an example to the world why this path can't be followed. It's not a good path to follow, and it leads only to corruption, disintegration of society, disintegration of institutions, and of course, poverty. So I think Temi has done a terrific job, and it is my honor and pleasure to support him in every way I can.
Gilberto, you are absolutely right. In one sense, I recall that old saying about the canary in the coal mine. Venezuela is the canary in the coal mine, telling the world, look what can happen to a very wealthy country, to a democratic country, to a pretty good country, if you don't watch out for the noxious gases that are coming up around you. But instead of listening to the canary, you get a Maduro putting the canary on his shoulder and telling the world that Chavez is talking to him. It's an extraordinarily dangerous kind of situation, and I'm not terribly optimistic, quite frankly, about either Venezuela or the world, because from my experience, a kind of golden age in the 1990s of the expansion of democracy and human rights around the world, but particularly in Latin America, including in South America, it's deteriorating and continues to deteriorate, and yet so many world leaders, so many people, so many voters are either blind or deaf to what is going on, or just frankly don't care. Let me ask you, Temi, for example, if you could get into a screening room and show this film to a half dozen people, specific people, world leaders, who would they be?
Oh, you mean half a dozen? I would show it to hundreds of people.
Oh, I'm talking about the leaders, the people who should be watching, listening, learning, but who are obviously not. I mean, I would suggest that Biden and Blinken should be two of the people in that room.
Sure. Biden, Blinken, Macron, Sanchez. I don't know, all the leaders that want or speak about democracy, that are interested in fighting authoritarian regimes and dictatorships. I mean, obviously, it would be great if people like Putin and Xi Jinping see themselves, see what they are participating in. But obviously, they probably don't care. But
well, no, they care. They're delighted with what's going on in.
Exactly. I like to say something, Temi. I think these guys have an agenda. I don't think showing this film to Putin or Chinese leaders or the Iranian or the Turkish is going to change anything. I think this should be shown like in the European Parliament to let the Europeans know that neutrality is immoral. This needs to be shown in the U.S. Parliament to show Americans that a timid, neutral position is immoral. This should be shown in the Hague, in the criminal court, to show to give more support to what's going on there. I mean, we need to revolve around the notion of getting help from the true powerful people. I don't think the issue has any. I share with you, Michael. I'm very pessimistic. But if we have any hope, I've been telling this for years. If we have any hope to change the situation in Venezuela, it will come from abroad. It will come from a coalition of democratically elected, freedom-loving countries that want to establish democracy in Venezuela. It's not going to come either from the natural allies of Venezuela or nor from within, but we just lack the power within.
Yeah, the lack of leadership is and clear direction in my opinion, is just extraordinary. When I was in Venezuela, I knew exactly what U.S. policy was. I didn't have to ask Washington, please, what do we do? This Colonel Chavez is trying to overthrow the government. What is our policy? I didn't have to ask the question. I knew what the answer was, and we talked about it. We said everything. Frankly, I think certain Venezuelan opposition politicians did not follow through with the right kind of leadership in the immediate aftermath of Chavez's two coups. That's history right now. But it's education, it's knowledge, and then it's pushing our leaders, American leaders, British, French, what have you. Once they understand and accept the facts, and the facts are all in this film, very dramatically proposed. I would argue. I hope. By the way, Temi, when is this going to be become publicly available? I know there's some more work to be done to shore up the rights of certain snips of the film. But when do you anticipate people will actually be able to see this?
Well, you just said it. The problem is that we need to acquire the rights for all these images that you see, interspersed with the interviews. There are all these images that illustrate what the interviewees are saying, and so to make the movie dynamic and to make the point and to make it dramatic and visual, but those clips cost a lot of money. So we haven't been able to pay for all of them, and we are still looking for investment so we can pay that. We do have a huge privilege, which is we have 3 major distribution companies that are interested in distributing the film, but we have to give them the film complete. For them, complete means you need to have paid for these things, because I mean, one could even ask, maybe you can pay for it yourselves, but it's not just paying for the thing. Is we have to. I will have to not re-edit the whole movie, of course. Most of the movies there. By the way, one of the things I want to say is that my initial project was to do a series. I have enough material to do a 4-part series that could be shown in Netflix or something like that. But anyway, what is there, which is a compendium, a compressed vision, we need to simply pay for that, and it has to be done by us.
Okay.
And that implies, anyway, that's the reason why. But what is good about it is that once we have that, we already have 3 companies, one in the States, one in Europe, and 2 in Europe, that are interested in distributing. And then it's going to be a question of negotiating which one is offering the best deal and so forth.
Okay.
But that's huge, because many movies are made, but they never find distribution.
We will get a little later in the webinar. We'll get to Peter Calderon, who will talk about just how all of this can be accomplished. I just want to add very much. I have seen the film so far, and it is dramatic. It's educational. It says all of the right things, and I hope that it gets out to people on Netflix or whatever as quickly as possible, and that people really turn away from their detective shows and their petty fantasies, which is what you see on so much of television these days, and really get to watch it. Let me remind people that if you want to ask a question, just look at the bottom of your screen, hit the Q&A button, and write it down. We will get to as many of these as we can. Let me see if we have anything so far. Hector Figueiredo says, are you going to show a clip or short of the film? For technical reasons, we can't show an actual clip from the film, but I would encourage you to go back to the initial invitation and look at the trailer, 2-3 minutes. It gives you a flavor, if not the full substance of what the film is about. Let me. Richard Rimland says, "What is the title of the film?" Combate, and it's a very apt title of the film. It doesn't hide what's going on there. Hector Figueredo also asks in Spanish, si no te interesas en los asuntos de tu gobierno, estás condenado a vivir bajo el dominio de los necios. If you're not involved in understanding what your government is doing, you're condemned to live under bad influences, which we all agree to. Okay, here's Chris Salas says, no question, but I have seen the trailer and it looks fantastic. I cannot wait to watch it, Chris. We obviously agree with you. Any more questions, let us know. Just throw them down into the Q&A. Any more comments, Orlando, Temi, or Gilberto, about the film, the problems in doing the film? Were you under any kind of pressure, danger to get all this together? What are you feeling now? What are you hearing from people?
I'll take that last word because I need to leave. And I would say, for those of us who've taken a strong stance in the film, there's no way we can go back to Venezuela. The country we have today will not tolerate this, speaking out to the world and letting the world know what's really going on in Venezuela. After this is released, Temi can go back. Orlando, cannot go back. I can't go back. We, love Venezuela, but if we are going to say what you should be able to say in a free society, there's no way we can go back to Venezuela and be safe. I think that this is reality. It's tough. It's rough. They're killing people. These tortures are not. They're trying to present it as something that went on. Torture is real today. There are over 300 and plus political prisoners in Venezuela today. In Belgium, the last couple of days, it has been presented how there is a kid going around with a VR device to allow people to have the experience, first-hand experience of what it's like to live torture. Of course, this is virtual reality, but it's pretty damn powerful. I've had it. I've gone through the experience, extraordinarily powerful. So this is not something that went on under Chavez years ago, and we're trying to denounce something of the past. This is real today in Venezuela. They're torturing people. It's happening. In the meantime, Maduro's trying to get talking about reconciliation. Of course, the reconciliation will be needed in Venezuela, and I am very much for it. But in order for to have reconciliation, you need forgiveness, and in order to have forgiveness, you need to have to stop the crime that you're committing. You cannot forgive the criminal while he or she is executing the crime. So this is going on in Venezuela today, and it's unacceptable. And this film is very much a denounce of what's going on in Venezuela. And I'm going to close with this. It's been a real privilege to be part of this webinar. And thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody at VAUS. Thank you, Temi, for the invitation. And I apologize for having to leave. I have my whole family waiting for me to go celebrate my 6 years birthday. So.
Gilberto, thank you very much.
Happy birthday, Gilberto.
Take care, guys.
Don't go to Venezuela.
Not for the time being. No. When we're free, I'll be there. First one there when we're free.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a great pizza.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Orlando, do you have?
Yes, it's an important issue that I want to introduce. Listen, when you have seen Delcy Rodriguez recently saying in an interview in a table in Europe.
Explain to people who Delcy Rodriguez is.
Delcy Rodriguez is the vice president of the Venezuelan regime of Maduro. And she participated recently in a table of negotiation with President Macron, Lula, President of Argentina and Colombia, and a representation of the Venezuelan opposition. The point is that they handle a lot of money for propaganda. And she say openly that in Venezuela, nothing happened. In Venezuela no pasa nada, nothing happened. And it's impressive how the propaganda with a lot of money just convince the rest of the world, that in Venezuela no pasa nada. In my experience as a diplomat, so many countries, so many even ambassadors recently, just they don't know at the end what's going on in Venezuela. They know about the immigration that is placed, they know about the violation of human rights, but they don't know, they cannot see the reality. They cannot see the painful of the people, the indignity of the people, what means to be prosecuted in Venezuela. They don't see it, they don't feel it. And even sometimes they don't believe it. And that is another point, because if you don't believe on the diplomatic basis, how are you going to apply responsibility to protection, for example? How you justify an intervention in Venezuela in order to avoid the devastation of a poor country? So people just use, sovereignty and justification, and part of the justification is everything that you cannot see. So with Combate, you can see it. And you can see very deeply what is the reality. And as Gilberto saying, not in the context of Venezuelan people, in the context, the geopolitical context, how that affects and impact the rest of the Latin American country. 2 million people in Colombia, they cannot coexist. It's a huge problem for Latin America. Another 250,000 people walking from Caracas to Argentina, walking and crossing just yesterday, 2 days ago. Girls have been violated 67 times. That is the drama that you're talking about, Michael. That is a drama on Combate. It's a combat against this process of barbarian. It's a monster that we have in Venezuela. It's a crime organization, and Combate, and in Combate you can see it. So how we can rescue Venezuela? I'm not pretty sure, even though I just finished my diplomatic mission with the interim government a few months ago, and I give my bid for the international law, for diplomacy, for the for negotiation, dialogue, and this kind of thing. I'm not pretty sure. This is a crime organization that just kidnapping a country, and that is Combate. You can see it, you can feel it there, and we really need the resources to finish it, because, by the way, Temi Lopez, with very basic resources, is a great artist, is a great producer, a perfectionist director, is a Venezuelan that has his heart in Venezuela, and you can see it also, the heart, the efforts, the perfectionism, not to the service of a film, to the service of the Venezuelan cause. And we need to be solidarity. We need to create solidarity with Combate. We are Venezuelan. It's a lot of people with resources that just to give the resource to finish that film is so easy. It's so easy. So we need it, because it's going to be a huge denounce around the world that's going to impact the conscience of the people that we need to impact. So it's just that I look into it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have a question here that from George Quintero. You should show the film to Marco Rubio. Well, we'll make sure we send the film to Marco Rubio, and we'll send this webinar to him too. What I would like to see is the film shown to Lula and Petro, particularly because one of the great changes that has happened in the whole region is that not only has Venezuela deteriorated catastrophically, but any real hope of the neighboring countries doing the right thing is also going down the toilet with people basically friendly to or the Maduro regime, or completely they don't care. what's going on down there. Let me turn to a question from Bob Stebbings. Bob Stebbings, by the way, is a former president of VAUS, and is in fact the fellow who brought us all together with this webinar and film. Thank you, Bob. He writes, what leader or opposition movement is most likely to lead to change? We saw Guaido flame out and others present themselves and fail. Any comment on this?
Orlando, you are the best suited to answer that question, I think.
I think that it's not just about a leader. I mean, as a person, it's about to understand what means, what we need in Venezuela in order to return to democracy and freedom. And the leader who has such a qualities to understand how could be a process of reconciliation in Venezuela is going to be a leader. Maria Corina Machado, I can give you a faith that represent that understanding. Even Juan Guaido. But again, we need the support of the understanding of the international community more than just to saying, I'm so sorry about what happened in Venezuela, or just to make a statement and declaration. If you ask me who need to see the film, okay, let's to share this film with what's the name of this guy? Of
Michael Moore?
Mel Gibson. Because in Venezuela, I'm not kidding about it. In Venezuela, one of the issues that we have complained and denounced in the International Criminal Court is the traffic of people, traffic of children, traffic of women in Venezuela, and trying to escape from Venezuela. So the tragedy in Venezuela, it has no exception in terms of crime against humanity. So new leader with the sensibility to try to vindicate how to reconcile a horrendous situation that we have lived in the future.
Yeah, but let me ask you one question, which I've asked you only a few days ago. Who now is the person? Because I think Guaido, with all his defects and flaws and whatever, was a very good figure. He had been chosen democratically and all that. Anyway, he committed a lot of errors and whatever, but he was a very good, charismatic presence. And I don't see who is the replacement for Guaido. I know they took him out, the same people who put them there. So who now could take over besides Maria Corina, who apparently has been, how do you call it, eliminated, basically? Who is there now?
I can tell you because I know very well all of them. Mostly all of the leaders in the opposition right now that compete for be elected of the unique candidate in the opposition, they are good. Maria Corina has a really chance to win. I think that she's going to win easily, but we have another obstacle. She is not valid. She is inhabilitated to participate in the election. Freddy Superlano is a wonderful person. Carlos Prosperi is a young leader, very understandable about the situation in Venezuela. Andres Calea is wonderful. Cesar Perez Viva, they are Democrats. They are prepared people. They are people that understand the situation in Venezuela. Again, it's not about one person. It's about the understanding of the situation, and all of them is experienced leader and politician in order to proceed with any kind of political transition in Venezuela. The problem is that you will see, and that is Combate again, is a complaint how even if we go into an election, that election is going to be manipulated. It's not going to be a transparent election. So we are in a cul-de-sac, how you say it in French. We need.
Callejón sin salida.
It's a combat. It's a combat. And by the way, just to add something, it's a lack of rule of law in the international law. You will not find this kind of situation in order to try to be solved. Because the only justification to an international intervention is a war. It's official combat. In Venezuela, most children die in a year than in Ukraine. More people died in Venezuela than in Ukraine. It's a real war, it's a real combat. So, but it's not a war. So as long as we don't have a war, it's not possible an intervention. So we are, in some way, we are in a campaigning with the international community, but we are alone. So combat, just penetrate that reflection as well. That's the film as well, just to add this issue.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily important to realize how much of a catastrophe this is. I have often said that if you put together a group of Nobel Prize winners in economics and other things, and have them work on a plan to destroy an economy, they couldn't have done a better job than what Chavez and Maduro have done. It is an extraordinary collapse. But going back to Maria Corina Machado, I think there's two facts. One is that if there were a real election in Venezuela, she would win, number one, for president. Number two, there will be no real election in Venezuela under the present system. In my opinion, one of the things that the US and other countries should do is absolutely support the primary process. And whoever wins the primary should be supported as the real president of Venezuela. Probably that'll be Maria Corina Machado. But let me go back to questions here. A parallel question from Richard Rimland. What would you like the Biden administration to do with regard to the issues being discussed? Anyone?
Or anybody else who wants to answer this question? Amongst the viewers. Again, what would Orlando? you are the diplomat.
And the diplomat, I don't want to argue with Mr. Biden. No, to be honest, one of the issues, just to give you another example, in Venezuela, we have Citgo. Citgo in that moment is facing a terrible situation because the concourse of creditors could go to an auction, and that auction maybe in the near future could be authorized by a civil court in Delaware. So what I'm going to talk with Biden about it, listen, we need to extend the protection of the assets of Venezuelan people in the United States. First issue. They say that they're not going to be more obstacle in order to give more protection. They need to give protection to that access because it's not just about Venezuela, it's about the sovereignty as well of the United States. This Citgo is a strategy company corporation, very important in the energy sector to the United States. Secondly, talking about the human rights and many issues in Venezuela, when you have in Venezuela 300 criminal prisoners, okay, with tortures in Venezuela, we need to elevate the voice. We need to put them in the negotiation, and they don't put it in the negotiation. They put election, and election. No, human rights, and human right. What means human rights? First chapter of human rights is to get freedom, the delivery of people who is in prison. This is a pretty well demonstration of the regime that they are really willing to move forward with any kind of concession that they're looking for the United States. And third, we need United States with a a stronger and strange lobby in United Nations. We need to elevate the voice about the real characterization of the regime that we have in Venezuela.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can see, is this webinar needs to end in 5 minutes? Because otherwise...
We have some time. Let me just read a couple of, not questions, but statements, and then get to the end part. From George Quintero, Venezuelans need to unite behind Maria Corina Machado. Her popularity is on the rise and her message has been constant. From Andrew Quayle, greetings to old friends Carlos, Ivan, Michael, Bob. What are the U.S. government and major U.S. investors doing to address this? I have a sense that they have abandoned Venezuela, and this vacuum is also occurring in other Latin American countries. I agree with that. From George Quintero, again, the U.S. should increase sanctions and seek out the straw man in the United States, cutting them off. All right, let's go to a question here, which will take us to the next part of this webinar. From Hector Figueredo, is it possible to crowdfund the budget to finish the film? How much do you need to finish paying for the royalties and have a final product? I think we should pass this on to Peter Calderon, who is the head of Rayograph Films, which is the producer of this. Peter?
Thank you, Mike. I think this is a great point of entry because we've heard the extraordinary and elegant and passionate commentaries from Orlando and Gilberto and you and Temi, explaining why we made this film, why it's important, and why the message of a government at war with its own people resonates with the rest of the world. But as the point that has to come up is, we need not remind people that cinema is a business and it takes money to make a film. And we had Combate up to now has been a labor of love, but supported with financing under the umbrella of Rayograph Films by a group of producers. I would say it's been self-financed, but we need finishing funds, and we need finishing funds primarily to purchase the archival materials, the rights to license that. And we know what it takes because we have a terrific documentalista, a guy on the ground in Caracas, who has prepared a spreadsheet going through a 115-minute movie and by the seconds, identifying the sources of each clip and speaking to them and estimating a budget. And pretty reliably, we are looking for $50,000 to acquire this rights. As Temi has explained, we attracted the attention already of distributors, and most recently at the Cannes Film Festival, where we met with Netflix, we met with several leading film festivals, and they were all impressed by the production quality of mainly the teasers and of course several minutes that they took to regard the full-length film. But now we need to finish that. There's a clear path to distributing our film, but as Temi explained, the distributors and the agents require that the film be delivered in finished form with the rights attached to it. And this is why the meeting today is informational. It's not a solicitation, but there is a link in the chat box, and it will be also included in our follow-up email to all the participants, so that anyone who's interested in becoming part of this project can contact us, and we will follow up with the appropriate protocols to show how an investment can be made.
Investment that obviously implies a return, right?
Yes, well, let me make some comments about the world of documentary films. You know, in recent years, documentaries have been extremely successful, and one of the largest grossing films in the U.S. in the last 15 years was Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 9/11. But there have been many others. Al Gore's film. They're genre documentaries, and they are bio documentaries. The two most recent bio documentaries, which were extremely successful, was the one about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the most recent one on the U.S. Congressman from the Bronx, the left-wing Democratic Congressman Ocasio-Cortez, which was featured at the Sundance Film Festival last year and purchased by Netflix for $10 million. Now, documentary films famously have low budgets because they don't pay the actors. It's a question of a great director and an editor. And for this reason, documentary films often generate a multiple of their production costs. So we will provide much more information for anyone who clicks on the link, and we will provide them with information about comparable documentaries, how they performed in the market, specific information of our budget, term sheet, an operational document. And we, of course, in addition to working with Mike and Vaus and communicating this information about the terrible humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, we are using this opportunity to attract other executive producers who want to join us on this mission. And it's a question of just takes not a great deal of money, and we can get this film out in 3 to 4 months. And obviously, we're looking at the major film festivals, Venice, Berlin, Toronto, where there would, I think, be a lot of interest. And getting the film into the hands of the major distributors. Temi has had a long-term relationship with Cinetic that represented the Ocasio-Cortez documentary and was able to create a bidding war for it. And so that a movie that may have cost no more than $2 million to make sold for $10 million. So we encourage everyone who's interested in this project to contact us, and we will follow up with the appropriate information that's required by investors. But let me thank everyone for your interest, and it's been a journey, about 20 months, and that Temi and I have lived through, but it's been very fulfilling. And as you've heard from Gilberto and Orlando, it's a very passionate subject that needs to be brought to the attention of the world.
Peter, thank you very much. People click on it. We will be sending emails to let you click further. And as long as you're clicking, I would encourage people to join VAUS, the Venezuelan American Association, as a member. The monster of Venezuela will not go away, and we continue to fight for it. So click on Combate and click on VAUS. And with that, I pass this back to Carlos Ivan.
By the way, I can see a lot of questions and a lot of comments there. Is there a way we can expand this a little bit to answer those questions or those comments?
Let's see.
You said we could be flexible with the time, and it seems to me that there is a lot of interest in a lot.
All right, well, let's extend this. Okay. This is the first time we've done that, but we'll extend it by a little. Robert Cooper says we can all contribute to raise the $50,000 total. Hector Figueiredo says, Mr. Calderon, why not consider crowdfunding? Hector Figueiredo says, again, I believe that maybe hundreds of people, if not thousands, would easily give 10 to 20 euros. George Quintero says a copy could also be sent to Andrew Young, B. Young in Atlanta. Hector says, I believe there may be hundreds of people, if not thousands around the world that would easily give, you said that already, 10 to 20 euros. And Richard Rimland says, what link? Send me the communication details to complete the film. Laurie, if you could take note of that email. We will send all of this information, the information necessary to take part in the Combate project. And by the way, to become members of ours, we will be sending this in a subsequent email sometime today or tomorrow. And then at another point next week, we will be sending around a link to this entire a webinar, so you can see our faces again if you can tolerate some of us, and once again you will have access to the contact details.
Mike,
any final comments from Peter, Demi, or Orlando?
Mike, let me comment about the crowdfunding. We had looked into it, and crowdfunding is really looking for contributions. It's very complex. It takes a long time, and we felt that it was much more that it wasn't practical. It was much more practical to find 5 or 6 investors who have an appetite for cinema in a situation where there's a very strong possibility of a very good return. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for people who believe in the film, who have an appetite to invest in cinema. And you know, we think, I think this is quality of Oscar material, and maybe Temi will be walking up the red carpet someday, because it's a magnificent film in an area where, you know, the appetite for documentaries probably been fed by years of reality TV, but this is a serious documentary that has tremendous interest in Europe, in the US, in Latin America, and I'm convinced it will be distributed worldwide. And we've got a tiny budget. I think the total budget would be about in dollars, $240,000 if when we finish raising all the money, which is nothing. All those documentaries that Michael Moore made and cost millions and millions of dollars, and Gore as well. So I think we're in a strong position, but it turned out that crowdfunding is for this type of project at this point in time, when we need to get it done in the next 3 months, was just not practical.
Okay, I very much look forward to seeing you guys walk up the red carpet to the Oscars. Just be careful you don't invite the wrong kind of people to come up to the stage and punch you in the nose, or maybe that would get you another couple of awards. But anyway, I think it's time. Let me pass this on to Carlos Ivan.
Yes, Michael, thank you so much. And Temi, very interesting, very insightful indeed. So we look forward, I mean, you guys being successful in the fundraising. Please feel free to reach out to Peter and to Temi through the link. Orlando, thank you very much for being with us. Gilberto had to leave early. As always, Michael, for leading and moderating this event. I would like to also thank BAU's Deputy Director, Lori Dominguez, for developing this event, and Linda Calvet, our board secretary, and Sebastian Lopez, who supported Lori in preparing this event. Thank you, everybody, for...
Wait, I want to thank myself, okay? I have many people to thank. Milagros Maldonado has been listening. She's one of the investors, Nacho Rocco, Tony Esteves, and many people who have contributed in many other ways. I want to just thank them all, because they have been very supportive and have allowed us to come this far.
Thank you, Temi. Finally, if you're interested in joining the Venezuela American Association of the US, please contact our team via today's invitation. Your memberships make our work possible. There's more events coming. Michael's preparing one very interesting in the next few weeks. We had Tuesco a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we're doing this to maintain interest in Venezuela. So please connect with us and join the association. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, and this coming Tuesday we have a presentation on it's called "The King is Dead, Long Live the King: Oil in Venezuela and Guyana," which should be an interesting contrast. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.